Hey everyone, I know it's kind of been a while since I made a video about Tekken, but since season 3 is on the horizon, there's some things I feel like I want to get out. But like many people, I am hoping for the best. I want season 3 to be good. I want the game to be fun. I want people to start playing the game again. And when it comes to generic hopes, overall hopes, I don't think it'll be as bad as season 2 was. We all know season 2 was a disaster. You don't need me to tell you that. And a lot of people are buying into the marketing. Like they have stuff with marketing like back to basics, refinement, whatever the hell that means. But my only issue is like, well, it's good marketing. My biggest question is what the hell does that even mean? Because the little snippets of gameplay they did show us worry me a lot. Because they're essentially all buffs, and you know what everyone has been asking for since around season 1 is nerfs. But what do they show? They show a bunch of new moves, new properties, new extensions, new combos, new counter hits. Like, this is not what we were looking for. But to be optimistic, hopefully some of these buffs are to make up for maybe some of the nerfs they're going to be putting on characters. Hopefully that's what these are for, and we don't just get more buffs making things worse. Hopefully. But when it comes to the main thing I want for season 3, I want to see a shitload of nerfs. If every character, once the patch notes come out, doesn't have a whole page full of down arrows, I'm going to be very disappointed. And I think what Banjo needs to do is they need to figure out a way to nerf characters that fit their original gameplay design. Because a lot of these characters they had limitations that held them back and what made them interesting. But over time, from 7 to 8, they've been mitigating a lot of these weaknesses like new moves, new transitions, and new properties or system mechanics. I want Famco to, dial it back and try to figure out what makes these characters interesting. Why do people play these characters? And how are you supposed to fight this character? Because some characters, while you sure could, they are technically fightable, it is not in your favor. Think about when Lydia goes into heat. Shit is basically glorified rock, paper, scissors. Now there's a couple of things I want to address. Now one thing a lot of people complain about is combo length. Now for me, I don't particularly mind combo length. I can understand when people don't like it, especially if you don't play a game with super long combos. Say like Dragon Ball Fighters, you want to play a game with long ass combos, the moment you get hit by Super Broly, put your controller down because you're watching a movie. But I think one thing that can help with combo damage, universally, aside from just individually adjusting everyone's combos, which is going to take a long ass time, is to nerf the strong air title spin, or SATs as we call them in short. And it's because they inflate a lot of combos. Number one, because they essentially pop a bunch of people in the air for longer. A lot of combos nowadays, they follow a very simple route. Essentially, you get launch, you do your filler, you bound, you do your SAT, then you do heapers, then you do your SAT again, then you do your ender, you hit the wall, you do your wall combo. Now these attacks do two things. Number one, they do a lot of damage because they're free hits. Who doesn't want more damage? Two, they also give you a lot more wall carry. And I think that's one other problem, is that too many characters have too much strong wall carry and too strong combo damage. Wall carry was kind of a problem in 7. Now everyone has damage. It's come to the point where you have characters like Miyari doing 80 damage combos when she hits wall, and people see that as low, when by all means that should be good damage. But by our modern standards, that's low, which is kind of crazy. One thing I want SATs to do is they should only be good for wall carry. That way, if you only use them, during a combo, it will be worse than just doing a route without an SAT. And not only that, this will also make people do more character unique combo runs. Let's take, for example, my character. Before season 1, he didn't have a strong air toast, but then they gave Kazuya sidestep for 1, and now that's basically replaced all of his combos. Because before in season 1, he used to do 3-1 cancels, so I really liked 3-1 cancels. They were fun, they were interesting, they were unique. You know, they were pretty difficult, so you wouldn't see everyone do it. But if you fought a real Kazuya player, he would do it. He would do it reliably. And this goes for a bunch of characters across the cast. You know, you would see like Brian do knee loops. You would see Nina do butterfly loops. You would see elite players do while sending 1-2 combos again. But because everyone has a tailspin, everyone reaches the wall really quickly, really fast, which makes combos longer. So by nerfing the SATs, you kill a bunch of birds with one stone. You make combos do less damage. You give them less wall carry. You give them less wall carry. They won't reach the wall. They don't reach the wall. They don't get a wall combo. They don't get a wall combo. The combos will grow shorter. One other thing that probably needs to change is some spike wall combos. I think the main issue is that they're just way too easy to do. Before, and like, you know, say like Tekken 7, because they have existed for a while, but before you had to adjust your entire combo to get it consistently. You know, you couldn't always get the spike combo after, say, like a direct wall splat. But because you can bound after any wall splat if you still have your tornado, it becomes super consistent, and spike combos are super good. Because, you know, unlike the normal combo scaling where the longer the combo goes, you know, it'll scale along with the combo. Spike combos, they always have like they have a set amount of damage, you know, with the guaranteed follow-up after, which makes them do a lot of damage. And, you know, there's like a bunch of them. You know, you have like Double Jin with his Morning Crow 3, you have Lee with his Hitman up 4, you have like Leo with his like Power Crush from stance, which gives him like a stomp. And what I would do is, I'm not exactly sure how they would do it, but I would make the spike combos very inconsistent from a tornado. Like if the tornado is immediately applied to the wall splat, it'll just make spike combos not work. But if you're able to figure out how to get the spike combo to work during mid combo, then you should be rewarded, because that requires, you know, actual knowledge, requires experience, and that's something you actually earn versus getting a wall splat. You know, say something like some like Demon Paw, he didn't get through that wall splats anyway. Wall splat, bound, spike. Like it's too easy and it does overwhelming amounts of damage. Plus they all lead into pretty good OP most of the time, so that's another issue. There's also the main issue of heat. A lot of people complain how strong he was in season 1, and most of those complaints were pretty justified. So what do they do in season 2? They make heat even better, and one of the ways they did it better is that they gave characters more ways to regenerate their heat, keeping their heat state going for longer. Don't need me to tell you, this was a very bad idea. And not only that, a lot of these things don't make sense. For example, why does Kazuya get heat when I hit down beg 1-2 and I do the hell sweep extension? Why? You know, especially on stuff like the hell sweep extension, that should be taking on my heat, which is what it did in season 1, and nobody complained about that. It was pretty justified. But now, like, it gives heat back, so you have like, even when you're completely empty and, you know, your heat state should stop, you just keep going. Because, I don't know, fuck it. And I think the most egregious is definitely like Law, because like his nunchucks regenerate heat, which makes his slide mix-ups really insufferable. But also, like, there's never a point where Law pops heat in a combo and then he goes negative. He can practically restore like 60% of his heat in one combo, and it's like his staple combo. It's not even like a heat regen combo. That's just what his staples are, and it's just stupid. And then you have things like Armor King and King. It's like, okay, they made a lot of the, like, their famous command grabs, like homing, like Giant Swing, Shining Wizard, Muscle Buster, Hades Drop. But then why do they give heat back? Like, because they're homing, that should consume heat by all means. Because normally you're supposed to, you have the option of stepping a grab, but when you make it homing, now you don't. And then, you know, you have also like weird cases like Leroy's chain punches, and Leroy's chain punches restoring heat, and then like Lee's just frame restoring heat. Lee's just frames restoring heat was always a good thing. He just never had a good thing to use his heat with. Now he does, and they buffed it for 2, and now it's really fucking obnoxious. So any function that restores heat, no matter what, that needs to go. Then there's the issue of installs. Now, installs, pretty much every character has them. They're all pretty good. I mean, I can think of like 2 top tiers with them. You know, you have Asuka, Brian. Their installs are really strong and also really dumb. And, you know, within like the Tekken blog, when it comes to them hinting at coming in season 3, they are saying that the installs are going to be separate from heat, which I'm not exactly sure what that means. My best guess is that like a character could have an install, but unless they're in heat, they can't use them, which I'm not sure if that would work, but that's one way to do it maybe. But if they don't do that, one thing that they should at least do is make your heat smash an install move, because you know you have a lot of situations where, say for example, you have like Asuka, she does something like her forward 1+2 plus on block mid launcher, and she does her heat smash, you know, super plus on block mid at 4 breaks, and then you know she'll either mix you up with forward 1+2 again or down 1+2 into the forward 2 install extension. Because like even though she spent her heat smash, like you still have to treat her like she's in heat, and it's really dumb. And this goes for practically every install character. So if they could at least do that, that would be a great change. And you know, on the top of your heat smashes, all heat smashes that wall spot, you know, Jin, Hachi, Hwoarang, Leo, that shit should be gone. And it's really weird because they have nerfed other heat smashes that used to wall spot, like June and Fang. They don't wall spot anymore. You know, they got the fancy new animation, but they don't wall spot, so it's a big nerf. But then you have Jin, Hwoarang, and Law just running around like nothing happened. And like heat smashes already do a lot. They go through like every reversal. They usually track a lot. So then why do they give you so much damage when they do hit? I mean, Jin's heat is like so mediocre, but it never mattered because his heat smash was just a gun through your forehead when he was in heat. And you know, that shit would like wall spot from like 10 miles away, and you would get like an 80 damage combo. Now, ideally, I would also like for them to remove, you know, some of the floor breaks, and this can be really toxic, mainly because, let's say for example, on like the, you know, like that one map where you have to break the floor 2 times, the low heat smashes, you hit them once, it breaks both floors at once. That alone is really dumb. And then like they're attached to pretty good characters. Nina has one, Asuka has one, Brian has one. Brian's is really cheap because you know, taunt heat smash. Hopefully they make heat smash like a frame slower, that way it's impossible to do that through taunt. That's the most reasonable change I could think of. You know, King's has always done a shitload of damage, tracks a lot. Now, I don't think they're gonna do that because floor breaks are definitely more situational than a wall spot, but it would be a nice change. Another major complaint is that people have with this game is the very inconsistent tracking of especially strings in this game, because the sad thing is like movement when you compare it to Tekken 7 and Tekken 8 has improved. You know, your steps are overall larger, and you can avoid more stuff that was practically impossible in 7. Like, you know, I've been able to stab stuff like Fang's back 4 or Heihachi's health sweep, which are practically homing in Tekken 7. It was impossible to move around those moves. In Tekken 8 you can, but that kind of doesn't matter when every other button you press will just randomly realign just to hit you, and it gets really annoying, and it creates like a lot of, you know, like the funny Twitter clips. And you know, while there's some explanations like, oh, this move specifically tracks to this side, or you know, they press too soon so their hurtbox got extended, there comes to a point where that just doesn't happen and the move just turns 180 just to hit you, even when you do like a clean sidewalk. It is extremely annoying. It is annoying for legacy players. It is annoying for new players trying to understand how to use movement. And I think if like 90% of the nerfs are just Bandai Namco just going through all the character strings and removing all the excessive tracking, I think that alone would make the game just feel so much better. Your movement would feel valuable, you know. It doesn't feel like, you know, you're just kind of stuck, because it's like, you know, instead of just like, oh, do I just guess high-low, or your movement is now an active equation in defense. You know, stuff like that would just make the game better. And I think one other thing, I would also want like heat bursts to have no tracking. It does feel kind of weird because a lot of heat bursts, they track to one side, and I think especially because heat is the way Bandai Namco is designed for new players to understand it more intuitively. And it's like, oh, heat burst, it's like a big defensive panic option. Okay. It's like, oh, you can sidestep it. Some guys sidestep right, and then they get clipped. They might not think to sidestep left the next time, because it's like, well, I got hit for trying it, so I'm just not gonna sidestep, so I'm just gonna hold it. And they made it completely linear, which just means more obvious. Not only that, there's still like some characters, especially like Brian or Jin, because their heat burst hitbox is so fucking huge, I get clipped anyways. You know, if everyone had like Reina levels of tracking where it doesn't track to either side, that would be nice. And if they did want to give like certain moves certain tracking, there is a way to do that. I mean, if you look at, say for example, like Double Jin is now 4-2, like it didn't have any real tracking season 1, and in season 2 they gave it exclusive tracking to the right side, and it has like this wind trail effect. And maybe if they use that effect as like kind of like a pseudo homing move where it's not fully homing, it won't track, you know, both sides, but it tracks one side. And where it's like, oh, you use this move to track to this direction, and then you have a visual indicator for that, versus just, you know, some moves being able to clip you and some moves not being able to clip you. Feels random. And you know, you want Tekken is already complex enough because every character has 1,000 fucking moves. If you can make things more intuitive through visual design, I think that would be a great change. Another big thing is that, you know, the game is offensively oriented, so one thing they did is they made a lot of risky options less risky. And you know, I think rest in peace, the Dusty L, he made a really good video on how lows were designing this game. It was pretty long, but one thing it did expose was the excessive amount of lows that are around -14. Now, why does that matter? It's for a simple reason. It's number one, a lot of these lows have a shitload of properties attached to them. Think Jin Season 1 down 2. That move was practically homing, it hit grounded, it was very plus on hit, it had the crush highs, and it was a counter hit launcher. It did all this stuff, and it was only -14. While it is like fairly, well, you can react to it, it's still an absurd move. And especially, you know, when the average level of players, you know, is around mid-level, you know, like red to blue ranked, this is a terrorist move in those ranks. And while they have seemingly nerfed it as it doesn't have a counter effect anymore, it still does all the other things. And then you have Kazuya with this too, which just does the same shit, but is a frame slower and is slightly worse tracking. A lot of these moves should be made minus 15. And it's like, okay, why? What does a frame of difference even matter? It's simple, because most characters do not have a 14 frame launcher from crouch. I can only think of a couple. Like you have Lee, Raven, Kazuya, June, Jin, Devil Jin, Eddie sometimes. Eddie's not even consistent. And like Drag can do it once if he's in heat. That's like 7 characters out of like almost 40. That is not a large number. So most characters, they just use a 13 frame, assuming they even have a good one. And the difference from being launched to just like getting a knockdown is astronomical. So at minus 15, it is the standard for when characters can launch. And it does. So that change will, people will actually have to consider what moves you're throwing out, because you throw out a minus 14 low, most of the time you don't die. But now you make it minus 15, it's like, oh, it's risky. Maybe I should pull this out. Maybe I should do a low, say for example, like Kazuya, it's like, okay, down up is 2. If somebody blocks that, I usually die. So what should I do? Okay, throw down back 4, down back 3, which are less rewarding, in comparison, but they're safer. Stuff like down back 3 doesn't really track. So down back 4 does track them. Therefore, people actually have risks, and we're gonna make people guess, and people guess correctly, it should be rewarded for that. But now it's like they kind of get away with murder. There's not much you can do about it. The other big minus 14 lows is the low heat smashes. Those shits are very toxic. For a good while, they were very inconsistent because they were just vary on frame data for whatever reason. You had characters like Paul be minus 12, you had Kazuya minus 14, and you had Lee minus 15. It was fucking all over the place. But now the devs have centered around every low heat smash being minus 14. Alright, that's overall good. But at the same time, it's remember how I was just saying that most characters don't have a 14 frame launcher from crouch? Well, even less of them even have a 14 frame launcher from standing. I mean, all of the staple launchers for 14 frames are you got Paul, you have Brian, you got Lars, you got Xiaoyu, and then you have similar cases of Drag where maybe if they can launch at 14 frames, they have to spend heat. But if you don't have heat, you'll get the launch. And because the low heat smashes are qualified as a heat smash, they go through all reversals, and they also track a shitload, which also means you can't low parry them, which just forces you to hard duck. And if you're in a situation where you have to hard duck, that's opening yourself to big chunky mids. So every single one should be minus 15. And I think one really annoying one is Lily's. For some reason that one, if you don't have a good mid punish, it's a really awkward ass mix up for some characters. That should be minus 15 and make her face you, that way characters get a normal punish. That should also be changed. Another thing is, one thing that's always annoyed me going from 7 to 8 is how they treated power crushes in this game. Mainly due to how when you absorb a hit, it will, if you absorb a hit and the opponent recovers fast enough to block, it will protect you by just creating massive amounts of pushback. This makes armor extremely annoying to deal with. And while it is kind of manageable, if, say for example, if it's a high, because you could just go through the armor, duck, and punish, most armor moves are mids, so you can't do that. But now it just pushes them far back. And when you think about it, the game is literally protecting people for making the wrong decision. It's your armor move, you throw your armor move at a bad time, you made the wrong decision. But that doesn't matter because we're gonna push you far away and protect you. And all you're gonna suffer is a bit of chip damage. And hell, for some characters, being farther away might be better. So, you know, making armor moves punishable again when you absorb them, but they don't actually go through, would be a great change. Because some people have developed habits of just using armor all the time because, like, either one, it works, or two, if it doesn't work, well, you'll absorb the hit and be safe anyway. So it practically feels like there's no risk. I would really appreciate this change. Now, overall, my hopes for season 2, season 3 are still pretty rocky. Although I do think they're on the right track because, you know, they did reveal every DLC, like, practically all at the beginning, and they're creating hype for the last one, which I think is a fair compromise of their old marketing strategy. So they are moving in a good direction, but I just hope that good direction actually means something, and they're just not giving us, you know, blatant copium words for people to call it. It's like, oh, the game's gonna be good this time, it's gonna be good this time, just trust us, and then they ruin it again. I want to be hopeful. I want the game to be good. I want the game to be fun. I want people to be playing this game again because I think it can be fun. And I hope some of the things I said in this video are somewhat addressed. And do I expect everything to go for what I want to go true? No. You know, I expect heat matches to still be stupid. There's gonna be like one heat smash that's still wall class for some reason for 1,000,000 damage. You know, you're always gonna have those things. You're gonna have weird ass buffs that like get reverted in like 3 months or something. But if the overall patch is good, and you know, and the DLC characters aren't super out of line, like they don't go crazy, I think season 3 could be good. You know, it could restore faith in players, you know, good word comes out by word of mouth, and word of mouth is like the best form of marketing because you spend like no money on it. And it all comes from a genuine place. So that's it for me. I know this wasn't very structured. This is just a rant. But if you watched the whole video, thanks for watching.